I hope we are being recorded now, because from this point on, you'll be able to follow this lesson on YouTube. This will be lesson number 27. So today, we're going to go over an area that we have plowed before. I'm just going to put it all in one cohesive unit so you can find it if you are interested later. First, we're going to go over the history of the word rapture, because there are a lot of people, particularly in the group that I grew up in, who say, rapture? There is no rapture. The word's not in the Bible, therefore there can't be a rapture. And so we're going to go over and deal with that issue. And there are many raptures in the Bible, more raptures than you think. And these raptures are not necessarily the rapture of the church at the sound of the last trump, but there are some, and I think it's worthwhile to take a look at them. And believe it or not, the rapture's in the Old Testament. It's just the way it was interpreted, you would miss it unless it was called to your attention. Israel is going to be raptured at the end of the age, the end of the tribulation. Israel will be raptured, but they're not raptured to heaven. And then there's a rapture of a great multitude, and we'll get into more detail about that in Revelation when Scotty leads us through Revelation starting next week. And then there's a rapture of 144,000, the 12,000 from each tribe of Israel. They're down here on the earth ministering, and all of a sudden they're up there in the heavenlies. And then we'll just go over the word rapture and the common passages that refer to it in the New Testament. So, let me see if I can make this work. Oh, there we are. In 832, Pope Damascus I was looking for someone to translate a version of the Bible into Common Latin. Common Latin was the language of the day, and so he thought that to be a necessity. So he contracted with a man named Jerome. Jerome's a very interesting character. He was a priest, a historian, a theologian, linguist, and he was fluent in about 5 or 6 languages. And so he started in 382 AD and finished the work in 405. And the result of that work is what we know as today as the Latin Vulgate. So he was taking all of the Hebrew, the Aramaic, the Greek, and translating it into Latin. And so when he was translating the New Testament book of 1 Thessalonians, chapter 4, verse 17, which reads, "Then we, which are alive and remain, shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so ever shall we be with the Lord." That word, caught up, in the Greek, that word was harpazo. And so he was looking for the appropriate Latin word to use in his Latin Vulgate for harpazo, and there was a word. That word is rapio. And the adulteration of that word rapio we have in our language as raptor and rapid. So you can kind of get a sense for what the word means. It's something's happening pretty fast. And it's as I call it, a non-mechanistic translation of a material object from point A to point B. You were over here, and then all of a sudden, you're over there. So the rapture, to those who would say it's not in the Bible, oh yeah, it's there. It's in the Latin Vulgate. But it's in a different form. It's called rapio, and it is a legitimate word, and it encapsulates the whole concept of what we're talking about here. The church is at one time going to be right here. And then in the next microsecond of time, it's going to be in another condition. We're going to be translated. We're going to be changed. This mortal, as 1 Corinthians 15, 51 and 52 says, is going to be clothed with immortality. And then we are going to rise. And it's going to be an event that will be visible. And we will be seen in the heavenlies at the sound of a terrific trumpet sound, which will scare the liver out of the rest of the population. And when seeing us leaving, they are going to be somewhat perplexed. Now, Never, that I know of, in the history of humankind, has such an event happened. And people, probably a lot of the church, if you were talking about this subject matter, would pass you off as a lunatic. It's never happened before. What makes you think it's going to happen this time? I would recommend that you read the story in Genesis chapter 6 of Noah and the flood. There had never been a flood before either. And some guy was there building a boat. And he built it for 100 years, 120 years, I believe. Never been a rain. What in the world? Oh, this guy's a nut. And they laughed at him until they could no longer tread water. So, my point, this thing, though it has never happened before, it is going to happen. All of the signs are there. And so, my counsel to you would be, oh yes, it's going to happen, and it's going to happen real soon. Whether we've got it exactly right or not, I'm not sure, but I'm, as they say, confidence. Now, in the Latin Vulgate, there are more books than there are in our Bible. And in the 1611 King James, there are more books in it than are in our generally accepted 66 books. Among those books is a book called Second Esdras. Now, some call it Fourth Esdras, but it is the apocalyptic writings of Ezra, E-Z-R-A, which we know. There is a book in the Old Testament called Ezra. But Esdras is the Greek way of saying Ezra. And if you read Esdras, like I said, it reads a whole lot like Revelation. And well, a lot of people, they didn't want to accept it because it says things that are preposterous, just like Revelation says preposterous things. And as you know, Revelation is the last book in the Bible, not because it was the last printed, because it was thought to be the least. And those who were assembling our Bible were going to leave it out. There was a big controversy over it. But when they read the last book, or the last parts of the book, and it said, if you add to or subtract from, bad things are going to happen to you. They said, well, we'll just leave it in here and you figure it out. I'm not going to deal with that. So that's why we have it. And it's a good thing they left it in there, because the book of Revelation, literally interpreted, made no sense whatsoever for the last 2,000 years. But for the last 100 years, it began to make sense. Until today, it makes a lot of sense. Because never before in the history of the world has it been available to us, the technology was not available, that we would be able to control commerce from a singular point. I can shut you down if I have access to your credit cards. Anybody ever lost their credit card or handed their credit card to the waiter and said, here, charge this, and they come back and they say, oh, I'm sorry, sir, but this card is invalid. That's kind of a shocking thing to happen, isn't it?
Yeah, especially when you didn't bring anything else.
Yeah. Well, I've had that happen. I've had my credit card compromised before, and oh, my word, what do I do now? I don't have any money, and all I have is credit card. Now we are at that age where the events written in Revelation make a whole lot of sense. So I would say, along with Daniel, that there's coming a time when knowledge will be increased and people will run to and fro over the face of the earth. It's the end of the age. If you need a better set of data to prove the end of the age, I don't think I can think of one other than the fact that we have knowledge now that we have never had before. We have technology now we have never had before. So at any rate, one of these books called Second Esdras, which was in the Latin Vulgate, if you read chapter 6, verses 23 and following, it says, and the trumpet will sound, and men will be terrified. And friends will make war on friends like enemies. And those who live on the earth will be terrified, and they will see the men who were taken up, who from their birth have not tasted death, and the heart of earth's inhabitants will be changed and converted to a different spirit. These are all the events that are going to occur in this final 7-year period. They're going to see these men who were taken up. And of course, that word men is, well, when I was growing up, we used the word men to mean men and women. It's generic. Now, in this day and age, to be politically correct, we would have to say men and women who were taken up. So, in 2nd Esdras, it makes the point that there's going to be something happening here, some strange event in which men are going to be taken up and who have never tasted death and never will. Strange passage to those who didn't have access to the rest of the Bible or any understanding of it. So, and of course, they're going to see these men as they were taken up, and at the end of the tribulation period, the heart of the earth's inhabitants is going to be changed. And for a period of time, there will be faith and faith alone on the earth. But at the beginning of that tribulation period, there will come a time where there will be no faith upon the earth. Faith on the earth will be barren. And also, which I mentioned just a little bit earlier, in 2nd Esdras, there's this passage which appears in chapter 9. So when there shall appear in the world earthquakes, wavering of leaders, confusion of princes, then you will understand that it was these things that the Most High spoke from the days were of old, from the beginning. In other words, these are those days in which, well, we call it the end of the age. And there are events that are scheduled to occur at the end of the age. Before this end of the age dilemma is, it's a time called the wrath of God. It's called the day of the Lord. And it's a time in which the wrath of God is visited upon the planet. And so if the wrath of God is visited upon the planet, what about those who are sitting here waiting for God to come? Can they stay here? Oh, why not?
It says we won't suffer God's wrath. It's pretty clear.
Because Jesus suffered it in our place, did he not? So there's got to be a mechanism here that takes care of that problem. Because otherwise, the church, the called out, the ecclesia, suffers the wrath of God a second time, which violates Scripture. We can't be here. There's got to be a mechanism to resolve that problem. And that mechanism, the rapture. Now, the first case of the rapture occurs, or is recorded, in Genesis 5:24. And Enoch walked with God and was not, for God took him. Interesting. Enoch was the 7th from Adam. Beginning that 7th period, 7,000th year from Adam, it's kind of interesting that maybe Enoch was a shadow and a type of the church. Those who walked with God and were not, for God took them. So that is the first place in the Scripture that talks about the rapture. Now, Scotty will get to this eventually in Revelation chapter 7. But it's recorded in Revelation chapter 7, verses 13 and 5 through 15, that you recall John, he'd been caught up to heaven in chapter 4, and he's being shown around, and he comes upon this group of people. It's a multitude. There were so many of them, he couldn't count them. A huge number. They were arrayed in white robes, and the angel says to John, "Whence cometh these?" And, of course, John's, I don't know, you tell me, I don't know whether it is. And so the angel says, well, these are those which came out of great tribulation and have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Call your attention to that word, out of. That is the Greek words which we learned back when we talked about in Revelations 3:10. Because you have a little faith, I will keep you from the time of tribulation, the great tribulation, which is coming over the whole world to test the inhabitants. That word out of is the Greek word ek. Same word used here, out of, great tribulation. They are taken out of great tribulation. And it says, and therefore they are before the throne of God to serve him day and night in his temple, and he that sitteth on the throne shall dwell among them. Now notice their job description. They serve him in the temple. Kings and priests? No, this is a different job title. They have a job but they didn't get the best job. As far as I can tell, the best job goes to the church. Those who are looking for him at his coming, what is our job title?
Kings and priests.
Kings and priests. That's pretty high up the pecking order, as I would see it. So we have a job. We got the best job. But these guys, they went through the tribulation, so both they had pain and suffering. We can't even imagine what they went through, but they came out of it. And apparently they were raptured out of it. And so they got a job, but they, in my view, didn't get the best. Now, another case of the rapture, or at least a rapture. You recall Philip, when he was out on the Gaza Strip, and I think he baptized the eunuch. And then it says, and when they were come up out of the water, the Spirit of the Lord caught away Philip, that the eunuch saw him no more, and he went on his way rejoicing. But Philip was found in Azotus, and passing through, he preached in all the cities till he came to Caesarea. Here you got Philip. He was over here. And then all of a sudden, he was over there. He was caught away. Same word in the Greek that we just talked about, harpazo. So if you want to say, you can scratch through that caught away in yours and write in raptured, because that's what he was.
Carl?
Yeah.
When there's an area where Jesus is confronted by some folks and he gets away. I don't remember exactly where it is. But
he said he passed through them.
Yeah, so they tried to put their hand on him, but
and he passed through them. I don't
Do you
know
think
if
the
that was
same
harpazo. I
What word
couldn't
would
tell
that
you,
have
but
been?
I'll look it up. I'll look it up because that is interesting.
He was in Nazareth.
I'm thinking, yeah, I think was he in Nazareth? Was it? Yeah. And he was, and I think I don't remember where they were coming after him to kill him, or whether they were coming after him
take hold of him to take him
someplace.
I think they were to throw him off the cliff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
I think so.
but he just passed through them. So that word, whether that's harpazo or not, I'm not sure, but I'll
I've
find
always
out.
thought that was kind of an immediate shifting of I'm here no longer.
Yeah, I'm not here. I'm over there
Somewhere
now,
else.
and that may very well be. I will check on. That's a good point. Thank you. I didn't even think about that one. And I thought of everything.
Carl, there was one more case when after he was resurrected and he came to the house, he just came through the walls.
He certainly did.
Yeah.
And when he was in the tomb, I'll guarantee you he was there one moment and gone the next. And so he was a candidate for a rapture also. But of course, once he changed into his eternal form, the characteristics of an eternal body are entirely different from ours. Like you point out, he was able to walk through walls. He could appear here, he could appear there. He appeared to 500 people all at the same time. You got to be really fast to do that. So he was clearly in another dimension. And you can do that if you were in a dimension outside this dimension, outside of space and time. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. When you get your new body, why don't you rapture over to my place and we'll talk about it. Let's see. Okay, here's another case. And this was the 144,000, and we're going to get to that in Revelation too. But there were a number of people, not Jews, they were Israelites, that were sealed. And that number was 144,000, and it was all of the tribes of Israel, and that was curious. It says all the tribes of Israel. How come Dan was left out? I don't know.
Dan means judging.
Huh?
Dan means judge.
Yeah. Where is he? How come he wasn't amongst the 12,000? I'm always wondered about that. When you figure that out, let me know. But it seems like the tribe of Joseph was there, and the tribe of Manasseh was there. But where was Ephraim? Well, of course, Ephraim is part of Joseph, but so is Manasseh. So why is Manasseh mentioned twice? All kinds of questions. Scotty's going to explain that to me someday. So, at any rate.
Carl, I had a question.
Yeah.
You said they're Israelites, but they aren't Jews. I don't follow that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Glad you pointed this out. Tell me the difference between a Hebrew, an Israelite, a Jew, or a Semite.
What blood are they from?
When I was reading the Bible, I always thought these were all the same. You know, I thought that was the Bible's clever way of saying the same thing, different way. But here's the story. A Semite are descendants of Shem. It's literally Shemite. Hebrews are all descendants of Eber. Israelites are all the sons of Israel, Jacob. A Jew are descendants of the tribe of Judah. Mostly Judah, but some of Levi and Benjamin. Judah, Benjamin, and Levi constituted the southern kingdom. So Eber gets a whole bunch of people. A much more selective group would be Semites, of which, by the way, Arabs are Semites. And then a more selective group, Israel. And then a selective group of Israel are Jews. So there is a difference. And it's very good to know that. Because remember, when we get over to Matthew 24, which we talked about before, these are Jewish people. And their Jewish expectations. And remember, Israel got divorced. And he got sent off. And basically it said that he wouldn't remember who he was. And that though he be as mighty or as numbered as the sands of the sea, only a remnant would be saved. Judah wasn't divorced. But it said that bad things are going to follow him wherever he goes. And guess what? The Bible is right again. It's amazing how that Bible is always seems to be right.
Tribes,
huh?
Those 12 tribes, they're not in order of birth. And if you take the Hebrew meaning of each of the names and put them together in the order that specifies, it spells out a messianic sentence.
Just like the first names of the patriarchs
From
in
Adam
Genesis.
to Noah,
From
yeah.
Adam to Lamech or Noah or wherever.
Yeah.
No, you know, everybody thinks that the Bible only has a surface text. The Jews are right. It's got a lot more in it than that. And the names mean things. And I don't think it's any accident that the name Manasseh means forgetfulness. And I do believe that our nation is a descendant of Manasseh, because if ever there was a forgetful nation, it's this one. We have forgotten our way, and we're paying for it, by the way. But the big part of that payment's coming after I'm out of here, I hope. Okay, so the 144,000, they were here. They had a job. By the way, they were sealed. Sealed on their forehead. And all the bad things that were going on down here to people didn't happen to them. And remember, on Rosh Hashanah, men are sealed. There is a sealing that goes on. And I'm thinking that that sealing mentioned in Rosh Hashanah is, not by accident, the beginning of this time of tribulation. Rosh Hashanah comes, the church is removed, and there is a sealing which happens. And that sealing is good because, I mean, the Jews, you know, their greeting changes on Rosh Hashanah. During Rosh Hashanah, the greeting is, may your name be written in the book. After Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, the greeting is, may you be sealed unto the day. Sealed unto the day meaning Yom Kippur. So the Jews have a rehearsal of this event. Only in Revelations does it make sense. They are sealed because, well, there's 144,000. They are sealed against those plagues which are coming over the whole world. So it's a good thing to be sealed. But then we see in later passages in Revelation where it says, and the Lamb stood on the Mount Sion, this is in the heavenlies, and with him 144,000 having his Father's name written on their foreheads. So they were here, now they're there. Now, you know, you've heard, we got to have some air in here. Of course, I could take my coat off. So I think I'll do both. Now, we talked about Matthew 24 once. Hopefully everybody was here when we talked about it because it's a very important passage. Matthew 24:31 says, and he shall send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet, literally great trumpet sound if you look at the Greek, and they shall gather together his elect from one end, from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. The heavens. Now, that heavens, that's what's above the earth. That's not heaven like the seventh heaven. And so there are those who have said that, there you got it. You got the trumpet sounding, angels gathering, Jesus descending, the elect being gathered. It's the rapture. And I thought that for years. The only problem is it didn't make any sense. Because the passage just before Matthew 24:31, it says that at the end of the tribulation, these things will occur. And I said to myself, you know, this is going to screw up everything that I have believed. Because I believed that, you know, you've got the first the Olam Hazeh, and then the rapture, and then the 7-year period, and then the Atid Levo, and the church leaves upon that blowing of the last trump in the front end of the tribulation period. And I find support for that all over the scripture, except for this one passage. And I said, you know, I can't resolve this. And I pondered that for 3 months, and it's really strange. All of a sudden, one day, I read it, and I knew exactly what the problem was. The problem was I didn't read the Old Testament, because the great trump, there are 3 trumpets in Judaism that have names. The first trump, the last trump, and the great trump. The great trump and the last trump are not the same trumps. And the Jewish people reading this passage knew exactly what was going on, but the church didn't. How come? Because you mention the word law in the church and everybody runs. We don't want to know anything about those Jews. Those Jews were Christ killers. So nobody wants to know anything about Judaism, but the Jews are God's oracle people. If you don't follow them and you don't understand their ways, you can't decode stuff like this. So at any rate, if you read Isaiah 27:12 and 13, answers the question perfectly. It says, in that day the Lord will thresh from the flowing Euphrates to the Wadi of Egypt, you, Israel, and you will be gathered up one by one. How? We don't know, except Matthew 24 says, by angels. And it shall come to pass in that day that the great trump shall be blown, and they shall come which were ready to perish in the land of Assyria and outcasts in the land of Egypt. And they will worship the Lord in the holy mountain in Jerusalem. Israel, and that constitutes Judah and everybody else, all of the 12 tribes, are going to be scattered around at that point in time, and they are going to be about to be killed. Because, as we know, Israel, the land of Israel, is going to be overrun. And the Muslims, who so much want to kill all the Jews, are going to take a bunch in captivity. They're going to kill a bunch. A few will remain in Jerusalem. And then, for some reason, I don't know why they're delaying their slaughter, but they take them to Egypt and to Assyria. Where is Assyria? Once again, if you took the land of ancient Assyria and overlay it on a map of current modern day places, it would include Iraq, Iran, Syria, Transjordan, Lebanon, parts of Turkey, all that region of the world. Somewhere in that region of the world is where the substitute deliverer, the Antichrist, comes from. And so that's the region of the world that we want to watch. If you want to be careful to know when the Antichrist is going to make his appearance, that's the place to look. But it'd be my belief you'll never see it, because we'll be out of here before he's manifested. So at any rate, when that great trump blows, that is the signal that Israel is going to be gathered. When are they going to be gathered? Matthew 24 says it's at the end of the tribulation period. They will be gathered back to Jerusalem, and there they will rule and reign for 1,000 years with the Messiah.
So is that a rapture, moving from wherever they are to Jerusalem?
It's called a gathering. He shall gather together his elect from the four winds of heaven, and he sends his angels out to do them. It's probably not going to be as fast as what we are going to get out of here, but it is, and nonetheless, it is a translation from one point to the other. Could be instantaneous. You know how angels work. They don't follow normal physics. So it could be very fast, and I would suspect that it would be. I think it would be very much like Philip. He was there, the angels would grab him, He's gone. He's somewhere else. You have a question?
Now, I was just gonna say, there's people, someone, maybe it was last week in class, said that a lot of Jews are starting to return to their land.
Yeah, they
I don't
are.
remember who said that, but
They're returning, well, because anti-Semitism is on the rise. You'll find it in France. You'll find it in Germany. You'll find it in Berkeley. Did you see what Fox News did? They put up a flag of ISIS and had a guy standing there on the steps, I believe to the library at Berkeley, waving ISIS flag. Guess what? Nobody said a word to him. Then they took, the same guy, took a flag of Israel, waved it across the steps. Guess what? He got killed. So anti-Semitism is not only rampant in the rest of the world, it's here.
I also think it's interesting how now instead of ISIS, they're saying ISIL for the Levant, which is Assyria and all that.
Oh, really? What's the difference?
The difference is one was let's see, ISIS.
That's in Syria, was it? And then
It was
Iraq and
Syria,
Syria.
and then they made it Levant because that is all of the Muslim.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the whole kit and caboodle,
Yeah,
huh?
and that's what our president said was ISIL. So this tells you how far we're coming.
Boy,
well,
Well.
I can add to that. We can tell how far we're coming when they opened Congress. I had Fox News on my Facebook page. They showed a YouTube of opening Congress with a Muslim praying to Allah.
this was John Boehner that did that.
John Boehner
He
prayed.
prayed it, calling him
John
God.
Boehner brought in an Islamic mullah who prayed to Allah, which in my estimation is, he was praying to Satan. Our nation now has sunk to its lowest level because these guys are trying to be politically correct. They put their political correctness over their theology. I don't think they realize what they have done. They have started this year off in absolutely the worst way that you could possibly do it. And I believe there is a curse now over our country because of what they've done. And so, but that's another story. So anyway, the point is, the Matthew 24 scenario has nothing to do with the rapture of the church. It has to do with Jesus answering his disciples who wanted to know, when are we going to get the land back again? When are we going to rule and reign? When are we going to be on the top of the social order instead of the bottom? He answered them, and this is his answer. And they are going to be gathered back to Jerusalem, and they will be there as emissaries and priests with Christ in the Holy of Holies for 1,000 years. But once again, okay, in the Old Testament, the rapture's there, but if you remember the last time we went over this, it's kind of hidden. You got to watch the words, because if you miss the words and interpret it the way the King James folks interpreted it, you'll miss the point. This is Psalms 12:1. To the chief musician upon Shemitah. I don't know what that word is. Whatever it is. It means the eighth of something. A psalm of David. Help, Lord, for the godly man ceaseth, for the faithful fail from among the children of men. And so, what are we talking about here? Well, when you first read that, they cease, well, they probably died. They fail from among the children of men. Well, they fail. Well, they're not here. They're dead. They're gone. Their spirit's gone somewhere. But the word in Hebrew for ceaseth is gamar, which means to perfect, to perfect. And the word fail in Hebrew is pakak, which means to vanish. So we've got a case here where the faithful men vanish. Now, I wish I would have brought it. I should have brought it. I knew I should have brought it. Should have brought the second Esdras, because there's a passage in second Esdras which says that there's coming a time when faith will be barren on the earth. In other words, there's coming a time when there will be no faith on the earth. And that moment is exactly 27 milliseconds after we're out of here, because there will be no one left who has faith in the Lord, because if you are found with faith, you're out of here. That's the ticket which gets you the free trip. So here's one passage in Psalms which talks about the rapture. And there's a better one in Isaiah 57, 1 and 2. And the righteous perish, and no man layeth it to heart. And the merciful men are taken away, none considering that the righteous is taken away from the evil to come. And if you read the following verses on that, it talks about the tribulation period and how awful and horrible it's going to be in there. And then it says, and he shall enter into peace, and he shall rest in their beds, each one walking in his uprightness. Okay, now that word perisheth, perish. Hebrew word is abad. Once again, it means to vanish. You were here, and you were not. And then taken away, the Hebrew is akaf, which means together into association with others, to harvest, or to be brought in. What do we know about this occasion? Rosh Hashanah is the marker point. It is the Jewish rehearsal and the Jewish appointed time. It is the first holy day of the harvest season. There is a harvest. The fields are white unto harvest. There will be a harvest, and that harvest will be those who are found with faith. This passage is absolutely, in my view, talking about the rapture, that the righteous are going to be taken away. More hope that we see that in the Old Testament, the rapture was still there. And as you've heard me say, the Old Testament contains the New Testament concealed. The New Testament contains the Old Testament revealed. So there it was concealed, and we revealed it. Another one of my favorites is Micah 7. Woe is me, for I am as when they have gathered the summer fruits, as great gleanings of vintage. There is no cluster to eat. My soul desireth for the first ripe fruit. The good man is perished out of the earth, and there is none upright among men. They all lie in wait for blood, and they hunt every man his brother with a net. Doesn't sound good. Once again, same word, perished. Hebrew, abad, which means vanished. And what happens when the good man is vanished? Well, there is no upright among men on earth. And there is a restraining force in this planet right now. And that restrainer is, I believe, the Holy Spirit. And how does he operate? He only operates through men of faith. You have to invite him in. And if he ain't in, he's not restraining. And if he is with me and thee, and we are gone, who's going to do the restraining? Nobody. There's another one for you. And now we get to the classical ones. 1 Corinthians 15, 51, and 52, behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. For the trump shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall all be changed. All of the stuff that was hidden in the Old Testament regarding the rapture is perfectly clear, in my view, in this passage. Now, I would point out to you that 1 Corinthians, as best we can tell, was written around 52 A.D. Matthew 24 was written, or the event occurred, around 33 A.D. Paul did not tell the disciples or the apostles in 33 A.D. there was going to be a rapture, because I don't think Paul knew. I think he had to go on a journey out in the desert, and he got tutored. And from that tutelage, he was told a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm sure we don't even know all the stuff that he was told. But he had certain portions that he was responsible for revealing to us. And this is the one. The time of it is at the last trump. When does the last trump blow? It blows at the Musaf, or additional prayer service on Rosh Hashanah, where the gates of heaven are said to be opened, and the righteous go in. They are perished from this planet, and they find themselves with the Lord forever. And we will be changed. I don't know about you, but This body of mine's decaying pretty darn rapidly. I need a change real quick. So that's why my hope is it's this year. I don't have a lot of time. And the second one, which is pretty classic, this one, 1 Thessalonians, that was probably written around 54 AD. For this we say to you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent or shall not go in front of those which are asleep. In other words, the dead's going first. And that's perfectly logical, because once you die here in this realm of time and space, you move to another realm. You're out of time and space. You are already there, immediately, instantly. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with shout, and the voice of the archangel, and the trump of God, concurrently and the same as the last trump. And the dead in Christ shall rise first, and then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up, harpazo, together with them in the clouds. Now, it's not really in the clouds. It's caught up in clouds. What does that mean? You ever see a bunch of white geese lift off of a field? Ever go hunting geese? Well, when they... Probably better if you haven't gone hunting geese. Because the worst thing can happen when you go hunting geese is that you kill one of them things and you have to clean it. And then you got to eat it.
Yeah, but they're so tasty. Yeah.
Yuck.
No, tasty.
They're awful. But at any rate, when they come off of these rice fields in South Texas, they come off in a cloud. Now, my point is, when we leave here, we're not leaving onesies and twosies. We're all going up in a cloud, a bunch. There is going to be, and if you're worried about being alone or anything, don't worry about that. Going to be a bunch going. Hundreds of millions would be my guess. Probably not billions, but I believe hundreds of millions are going to be leaving this planet, and it's going to be obvious to all who see and perplexing to all who see. And at the sound of the trumpet, you are not going to be terrified. You're going to be glorified.
Amen.
And we are out of here, and the rest of this world, I'm not even looking back. I don't know about you. I'm just looking forward, because I don't care anymore who gets elected. So we will be caught up in clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And you heard me one time talk about how high are we going when we meet the Lord in the air. Kenneth W. Wuest's Word Studies. I like this guy because he knows the Greek so well that you can discern things from the words that are used in Greek that, they just pass away in English. That word in the Greek for meeting the Lord in the air, the Greek word is air, A-E-R, almost like A-I-R. But there are two words in the Greek for air. One of them is air, and the other one is ether. Now, air, if you were standing on top of Mount Olympus, and you were looking up, and you want to talk about the air above Mount Olympus, if you're looking up, you use the word ether. If you're on top of Mount Olympus looking down, talking about the air, maybe there's an eagle flying around down there in the air, you would use the word air, A-E-R. So what does that tell you? Well, that tells you that we're going to meet the Lord in the A-E-R. Now, that means, according to Kenneth W. Wuest, 6,403 feet. We are going to meet him somewhere shorter than 6,403 feet above the ground. Now, you can't say you didn't learn something in here today. Just tell the pastor we're going to meet the Lord at 6,403 feet or less in the air. So, here's another passage that talks about this event. And I left one of the most important verses out, and that's verse 18, which says, "Therefore, comfort one another with these words." Anybody here need any comfort? I don't know about you, but the way this world's going, I need a bunch. Where are you going to put your faith when this event happens. Put it in your bank account, put it in your life, put it in your job, put it in your country, put it in the Republican Party. Right? I don't think so. How about Fox News? Fox News is going down the toilet. Now they're playing the same old games as everybody else is. We are encompassed with nothing but fraud and deception. And it will continue, and it will get worse. And we'll just kind of keep a fraud and deception meter here, and once a month we'll just see how bad it's gotten, because I predict, I'm a prophet, you know, over the next 9 months it's going to get a lot worse, a whole lot worse, to the point when we get to Elul 29 of this year, which is the day before Rosh Hashanah, when the Shemitah is supposed to hit, there is going to be one catastrophic event happen in this country. And we don't know what it is yet, but something. But we won't care, because the next day we're out of here. So at any rate, comfort one another with, what did I do? Put this in here twice.
RaptureReady.com already has a Rapture Index.
Oh, do they? Oh yeah, this is 2 Thessalonians, and this is the one where they parsed only 5 minutes?
It's 10 to 12.
I made this lesson specifically short so that we would have time to
I said
talk.
15.
Okay. So I only get to talk. This is really good. Here, I like this one. It says, "Now I beseech you, brethren, by the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ and by our gathering together to him," the rapture, "that ye be not shaken in mind nor troubled, neither in spirit nor by word nor as in letter from us, as that the day of the Lord is at hand," because apparently that one letter was circulating like that. "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come unless there come," well, the passage uses a word in Greek called apostasia. Now we know it as apostasy, right? What is an apostasy? Why, it's a falling away of the faith. Once again, lean on Kenneth W. Wiest. He said, no, you have missed the point. Apostasy only means a falling away from the faith if the word faith is right there next to it. It's not. So you have to read this not as a falling away from the faith first, that a man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, but you must insert the word, for apostasia, the word departure. So unless there come, and not a departure, the departure. Unless the departure comes first, and that man of sin being revealed, the son of perdition. Departure, what departure are we talking about? The gathering together to him. So what we have here is a statement clear as a bell. Are you a premillennialist? Well, I think so. We are out of here before the millennium. We are out of here before the tribulation, because he cannot be revealed, the son of perdition, unless the gathering happens first. So one more reason that we can take comfort in this